Hey guys, just got another question from gettingmygrill at AOL.com. It says, from one barbecue lover to another. There's nothing like a great grill on a beautiful day. And don't get me started on the toppings. Ketchup, mayo, pickles, onions, and the occasional tomato. The list goes on. The only problem, I just don't have enough space to doctor up my burger the way I want. Any tips? No problem, amigo. Step 1, grab your favorite condiments. Step 2, grab a muffin tin. Step 3, go to town and fill it up. Boom, baby, and send.
Guys, doesn't it feel like we've been in this meeting for a long time?
Well, good morning. I just want to clarify, I don't make a habit out of saying boom, baby. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was the AOL.com reference, but who knows? It's crazy. Hi, I am Pastor Chris, and I am the West Location pastor. It's great to be with you today and just have the opportunity for us to hang out and to be here. We've been walking through this Life Hack series. Pastor Steve talked about obedience last week and did a great job. That was awesome. So one of the things I know is I think about my life hack and I think about time. One of the stories that comes to mind is the reality of just literally about 15 years ago now when it was time for our daughter to arrive. We didn't actually know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but I remember it pretty clearly. I was on staff at a church, and every week we went on a staff meeting and went to lunch. And so this was no particular different day. We took off from the church and went to where we were going to eat. That day, we chose to drive 20 minutes away and go to Albert Lea to grab some grub. And so we're sitting around as a staff talking and eating and just kind of hashing the things out that we wanted to discuss that day. And I got a phone call. And it was my wife on the other end that said, I just want to let you know that I think you should get home. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, it's time. I've been mowing the lawn and it's time. And I was like, wait a minute, right now? I said, I'm in Albert Lea right now. And much to my surprise, she was like, what are you doing in Albert Lea? And I was like, eating. We're having staff meeting. And she's like, you need to get home. And so I hung up the phone and we got in the car and we took off. Now don't worry, I got there on time. Everything was fine. But man, what a rookie move, right? My wife was ready to about go into labor and I was 20 minutes away. Just craziness. So in her life, in that moment, I created an urgency that she did not particularly need in that moment. It was important for me to have been there, to have been close. And in that regard, I learned some valuable lessons. So anytime we had the next child, I was ultimately a lot more closer and made that a matter of importance. So Charles Hummel has a quote that I love out of the Tyranny of Urgency. And he says, we live in the constant tensions between the urgent and the important. We live in the constant tensions between the urgent and important. And I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but I want to give us a clear focus as we dive into this life hack message. What does it look like to live in that tension between the urgent and the important? And what does urgency have to play? What part does urgency have to play in the middle of this? So how do you determine what is worth focusing on? What part does this urgency play that robs us of focusing on those things that are important? And so one of the things I know is many people would maybe even say, well, aren't they the same? Aren't urgency and important the same? And I hope that as we kind of walk through this today, you'll get a clearer picture that indeed they are not the same. But I think we have to start asking some questions. And one of those questions that I want to ask is, or make a statement, I suppose. There you go. If you don't take time to determine what is important, it will be determined for you in the urgent. If you don't take time to determine what's important, it's going to be determined for you in the urgent. And so what things are important to you? I don't think that the urgent and the important are the same thing. I love to ride mountain bike. It's one of my favorite things to do. And sometimes I don't wear a helmet. But we would all agree that wearing a helmet is an important thing. Now, if we're riding the bike and we don't get any accidents, there's no issue there. There was no urgency whatsoever. But if we ride the bike and I fall and I crack my head open, it was kind of important, and the urgency is kind of heightened at that moment. So that's just kind of one example that I want to throw your way. Listen, we all think that a lot of things are important in the midst of trying to weigh what is urgent and what is important. But unless something happens, then we're not really directly affected by making that decision and making that choice. But why do the urgent and important matter? And I think a great statement is the urgent and important matter because time matters. The urgent and important matter because time matters. We're all given the same amount of time. We're all given the same amount of opportunity to live and breathe and have breath in our lungs. And the reality of what we do with that time matters. Are we making the most of our time? Are we asking those tough questions? Are we willing to engage what we want to see our time spent on? I think so many times we find ourselves in places where like, hey, this is time. Maybe you've said that. This time just really doesn't matter. But I think as long as we're alive and as long as we have breath in our lungs, it does matter. And we have to ask those questions. And we have to be willing to engage why time is important to us. And so, as we look at that, there's something I really want to get to the heart of today, is how I'm spending my time reflecting what I want my time to say about me. Is what I'm spending my time on reflecting what I want my time to say about me. If we took a survey right now, what would your time say about you? What would the time that you're spending say about you? If you wrote it all down, I think you get a really amazingly clear picture about the reality of what your time is saying. The truth is, we probably wouldn't like everything that our time says about us. We'd be like, oh, I do that. That's crazy. Oh, I didn't realize I spent so much time right there. That's crazy. And you can break that down however you want, whether it's family. How are we spending time as family? What is my time saying about me at work? What is my time saying about me with my friends? What is my time saying about me with activities or social media? What is the time that I'm wasting? Or what is the time where I'm being intentional about making the most of it? Maybe a better example is something like this. Those signs that you see. Some of you are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Pastor Chris. Well, I spent a fair amount of time in the fall watching college football. And watching college football, if you pay any attention at all, you'll notice a sign like this. And you're like, okay, help me break this down. A bridge over troubled water, a large tree, Batman, and Superman. What do those have to do with a life hack on time? Well, if you understand football or any game, there's an allotted amount of time that you have to play. And what you call when you have the ball in your hands during a football game, when you're on offense, I hope I'm not losing any of you. Anyway, what you do with that time is essential. Like, none of these pictures essentially have anything to do with football, but the way that a team calls the plays to try to throw off a deception, the other team, is where you get these. And so Batman may resemble one play, and Superman may resemble another play, and don't worry, there's no flying in football, in a tree. And so let's switch it a little bit. What if there was a sign for your life? What if there was a sign for your life right now, and there were different things that represented your life and what you wanted to do with your time, the plays you wanted to call, and the things you wanted to see happen in your life. And maybe you could put money here, or maybe you could put a boat or a camper, or maybe you put family, or maybe you would put church, and all those things that represent you in the plays you call. And maybe your life, I don't know, during a football game, some team wins, some team loses, and if they call the right plays and the breaks go their way, they win. But I think sometimes in life, it's eerily similar. We have this board, and we call the plays, and we continue to pick the same play, or we continue to pick a different play. Are we getting the same result? Are we getting different results? Is it what you want to really represent you? I mean, maybe there are seasons in life where this has been money, this has been bills, this has been stress, and this has been something else. And it really isn't a clear depiction of what you really want life to be represented as. And then you switch them around, you can change them up. Life changes, seasons happen in life, and something comes about. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but what 4 pictures would be on your board? What pictures, what things are representing in your life right now? Maybe you even have some that are sliced in half, and you have half here and half there. But what I do know is that we look at the life of Jesus. One of the things I'm challenged by is that, oh no, sorry, I jumped ahead. Pardon me. Anyway, so as we're running the same play, expecting different results. So the question I want to ask is, are we using our time to focus on what matters most? Are we using our time to focus on what matters most? And I think Jesus, it gives us one of the ultimate challenges. If as I took time to think about what Jesus' board would say, I think some of the words that come to mind would be the kingdom. So heaven and the Father in heaven, mostly people, spending time with people, engaging with people, having conversations, prayer, and leading his disciples. I think those would be 4 things that you would find on Jesus' board. And to me, that's challenging because I think it draws us into the reality of a story that we're going to look at today out of John 4. It gives us a clear perspective about maybe a guideline, maybe a reality of what we would want to see in the middle of asking what our time should say about us and what our time should represent as we look at making the most of it. So in John chapter 4, we see a story that talks about finding what is important and what is urgent and trying to make the most of it. And in John chapter 4, we read this. He, being Jesus, had to go through Samaria, and on the way, eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. Jesus does some things in this passage, that echo what's important to him. One of the things I know is first, if we go back, he had to go through Samaria. One of the things that if you read the Bible and you pay attention as you read, Jews and Samaritans didn't get along. And Jewish people did their best, which Jesus was Jewish, did their best to avoid Samaritans. They did not look kindly on them. They didn't like them. They were just, they didn't even talk nice about him. One of the things that we find about Jesus is Jews didn't go through Samaria, but Jesus did. One of the things I know is that as we look at this, not only did Jews not talk to Samaritans, but Jewish men would never have talked to a Samaritan woman, but Jesus did. And just the power of that statement alone, that Jesus was willing to say, this is valuable to me, this woman matters to me, I'm going to have a conversation. So what we find from Jesus is this. Uno más. Pursuing the urgent focuses on the pressures over people, while pursuing what's important focuses on people over pressure. I just want to dive in and stop right here for a minute and look at this, because most of us can relate to this reality, right? There's pressures and there's people, and sometimes people are pressure. But we look at our life and we say, wow, there are a lot of pressures of life. There are a lot of things that are demanding of our time. There are things that want our attention. There are things that call us out of things that we would love to be a part of, namely time with people and people that matter to us. And urgency does that. Urgency creates this reality that people are more demanding of our time and energy and those things than they really are. But if we focus on the important gives us the right perspective of focusing on people over the pressures. because Jesus would have known those pressures. Why are you talking to a Samaritan woman? Why? I'm sure he had the conversation later on with the disciples. Why are we going through Samaria? We could easily go around and avoid, and it would be so much easier. But Jesus' reality wasn't worried about the pressures that Jewish people may have put on him. He was more concerned about the individual that he was going to have a conversation with, this woman at the well. And I think you and I wrestle with those same realities. Whether they're realistic pressures or implied pressures, are we focusing on people? Because I believe that's the important thing to do, is putting those people first rather than the pressures. What's winning out in your life? People or pressures? There will always be pressures. There will always be fires to put out. There will always be things to take place in. But are you willing to cultivate relationships and invest in people? Are you willing to give them the benefit of the doubt? Are you willing to go the extra mile to have that conversation? Jesus doesn't just stop there for a drink. There's something more important that's going to take place. Have you ever had those moments in life where you're having a conversation? You're having a conversation, and you think it's just going to be a regular plain Jane conversation, but it takes a turn. And I think we find that in this passage, and I would just want to continue on right now. Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks the water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst, not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life." This woman said, "Sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty, won't ever have to come back to this well again." I love this phrase right here. Endless life. Gushing out, bringing life and life to the full. And we're going to see how that plays out here in just a little bit. But her life was being controlled by urgency. One of the things we see is that this woman, it was the middle of the day, the story tells us. Listen, ain't nobody go to the well in the middle of the day unless you didn't want to be seen. You didn't want to be talked about. You didn't want everyone else around. So we're finding some things out about this woman's life that bring to light why this conversation maybe was so necessary. The reality that Jesus was meeting her there, and it was essential for them to have a conversation. There was a pattern of shame and hurt and urgency that was holding her captive. Her urgency caused her to miss what Jesus was saying. She was being robbed of the important. As we look at this passage, everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give them will never thirst. She thought Jesus had like this special water, like maybe like not just tap water, but like smart water, right? And just that reality, like, give me that water. That's amazing. I don't ever want to have to face the embarrassment. I don't ever want to face the hurt. I don't ever want to have to face anything like this again. People talking about me behind my back. I just want to get the water and get back to my house so I can get on with life. Her urgency caused her to miss what Jesus was saying. I believe that we're being robbed when our focus is a perceived urgency. Urgency does a good job of masking itself as important. She thought it was important that she would just go to the well in the middle of the day and miss all that, but she was living in urgency, and she was living being robbed of finding what was important and missing what Jesus was talking about. So here we go. Jesus continues the conversation. He says, "Go call your husband and then come back." And she says, "I have no husband." She said, "That's nicely put. I have no husband. You have 5 husbands. And the man you're living with now isn't even your husband. You spoke the truth there, sure enough." Jesus didn't waste time. At first, Jesus talks about the reality of Anyway, he didn't call her out in coming in the middle of the day, but he gets right to it. And I want to take a minute here. How would you handle information like this? You just meet someone. And you come to the place where he tells you everything about you. How did you know that? What's going on? watch those shows where it's revealed like something about their life and they're like, what would you know? Well, man, maybe you need a minute with that Jesus knew everything about this woman. So if Jesus knows everything about this woman, maybe Jesus knows everything about us. So I believe that her urgency is our urgency. Her need for water that brings endless life. Her reality of being known by someone. Here's what I know. Urgency robs us of value while importance helps us see with clarity. This urgency was robbing her of value. It was causing her to miss life. It was causing her to be judged. It was causing her to try to be unseen. But I love it. The importance of the conversation, the importance of the reality of what was being talked about. She was seeing life with new clarity. She was seeing life with a newer clarity than she had ever seen. And even if she was standing there in disbelief that Jesus knew everything about her, something was changing within her. Something was happening and taking place. And Jesus offered something that was missing in her life and in ours. Love, forgiveness, value, significance, being known, the idea of security. Do any of those resonate with you right now? Love, forgiveness, security, being known. I don't know if any of those hit you right now in a particular way. One of the things I want to challenge you with is, what if one of those changed today? What if one of those changed right now in the reality of your life? That you knew love in a different way, or that you knew security in a different way, or you knew that being known in a different way right now. Maybe you found value or forgiveness. How would that change your life right now? Well, we go on to read in the story, and we find out a little bit more. The woman took the hint and left. In her confusion, she left her water pot. Back in the village, she told the people, "Come and see a man who knew all about the things I did, who knows me inside and out. Do you think this could be the Messiah?" And they went out to see for themselves. She just took off. She left her pot. She took off running. Something had struck her heart. She was changed. She ran into the village. She shared with anyone and everyone and anyone about Jesus knowing her life, and in such a way bringing about the reality of something that was totally different about her that had changed just for moments ago. Can we just take a quick sidebar here? Can we just take a quick moment? There's something I want to really pay attention to that just struck me crazy funny. Come and see a man who knew all about the things I did. A couple observations from that. I think everybody in town already knew everything she had did. Yeah, maybe as she told, they're like, "Oh, yep. We know everything you did. We've been keeping track of the amount of husbands you've had, or we've been keeping track about this, and we know what's going on in your life." And maybe on the other side of that, there were people that were like, don't say anything. Shh. You said you wouldn't say anything. My wife is right here. This is going on. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine the stir that would have caused in the midst of the situation of that time in that city? This woman that was living in urgency of not being seen or talked about or known suddenly had a transformation, and everything was laid out on the table. I don't know. But what I do know is, what if someone knew everything about you? Would you respond the way she did? Because I think so many times we don't respond that way. If somebody exposes something about us, we withdraw, we go into hiding, or maybe we lash out and we just defend ourselves to the hilt. And the reality of what takes place in that is just so huge. But what if someone knew everything about you? Would you respond the way she did? Because what I know is that she didn't respond, I believe, the way that we normally do. She responded in a way of being known and loved. And I think that's the key part of this. Because so many of us don't want to be known, but we want to be loved. Or maybe we want to be loved, but we don't want to be known. But I think that the reality of true freedom lies in being known and loved. And that's exactly what happened in the midst of her conversation with Jesus. She became known in such a new way because everything was out there. But she was loved in such a powerful new way that changed everything. And I love that. I love the reality of that statement. And it says that everyone went with her, and they went out to see for themselves. We make important what's important. May we guard it. May we live it. May we repeat it. The people around us will take notice if something different takes place. So what I do know is this. Pursuing what's urgent pulls us in many directions. This idea of being pulled in so many directions by the urgent, of the reality of away from the important, it makes us inefficient. It allows others and situations to distract us. The pressure to maintain that urgency is costly. The pressure to be pulled in many directions is so costly because it challenges us in our character. And that's something that I don't want you to lose. It challenges us in our influence. And sometimes we're blessed with influence, whether with family or whether with friends and work, and that's key that we hold on to it. But if we're being pulled in many directions, that is at jeopardy. And also losing perspective. Oh, I can handle this. If I'm being pulled in many directions, I'm good. I can task a lot of things. And I think that's dangerous because we can't always get those things back, or if we can, it takes a lot of work, and it comes with being known and loved. But we see this on the other side. Pursuing what's important pushes us to a single focus. Pursuing what's important pushes us to a single focus. It pushes us to prioritize and to put into place those things that need to be on our board, and for us to follow them and for us to engage them in such a powerful way, and to bring us to a place where people take notice and people want to follow and be drawn to the reality of what life looks like when we live that way. In Colossians 3:2, there's a verse that I love. It says, "Look up and be alert to what is going on around Christ." That's where the action is. See things from his perspective. What I want is I want to be where the action is. Paul is talking to the church of Colossae and saying, listen, this is important, this is valuable, this is essential for you to pay attention to. I want you to know, I want you to understand, to look at what is going on around Christ. Not look at what was going on around work, what is going on around your neighborhood, what is going around in your family. I want you to look at what is going on around Christ, because that's where the action is. I want you to begin to see things from his perspective. I want you to know that the emphasis and the importance you put on these things is vital in the way you live when you surround it from my perspective. One of my stories of one of my friends, I was having a conversation with him just not long ago. And he was talking about the reality of not having time for God. And he was challenged by something. He looked at his calendar, and he's looking over his calendar. He's got meetings. He's got to be at this. He's got to do this. And he noticed something oddly strange about the reality that there wasn't God in his calendar. And he made the determination. He said, listen, I make these urgent. I make these are important, but I make them more urgent than time with God. So I want to begin to put God into my calendar. And you know what? It's working for him. Giving him the focus of the scheduled time, not hoping that he can get it fitted into it. He puts it on his board. He makes time for it. It's on his calendar. This is my time with God. And I love that. I'm challenged by that because it's making our days count. And in Psalm 90, verse 12, I love this verse. It's one of my favorite verses of all the Bible. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. This goes back to that time conversation. We're all given the same amount of time. We're all given the same amount of moments. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. What does it mean to gain a heart of wisdom? It means actively focusing on what's important in our days, in our time, in our interactions, even to the point of planning it out until it becomes routine. I love this verse for so many reasons because it continues to challenge me as a husband, as a dad, as a guy, as a pastor. Am I making the most of the days that I've been given so that I can gain wisdom to understand what's important, to understand what is really taking place around me, so that I can live like it talked about that gushing water of endless life. And I can see God work and God happen in awesome ways in my life, and I'm excited about that. So there's some things that I want to ask you right now. Or actually, I have this quote first. You will not passively find what you do not actively pursue. I'm never going to be the dad, the husband, the guy, the pastor that I want to be if I do not actively pursue the important things of the time that I have. I'm not accidentally going to find it. It's not accidentally going to fall in my life. I have to my lap. I have to actively pursue it. So we need help being reminded to actively pursue what's important. So I think we need to ask ourselves some questions in determining the important. So here's some things I just want to run by you. If I'm a Christian, am I consistently making time to be with Christ, to read His Word, to pray, to be in a part of community, to serve? Am I focusing on showing others who Jesus is with my actions and attitude? If I'm married, am I praying for my spouse? Am I building them up? Am I serving? Am I expressing love to them? Am I putting their needs before mine? Am I protecting my thoughts and my heart from distractions? If I'm a parent, am I teaching my kids to grow? Am I teaching my kids to grow in a relationship with Christ? Am I spending time with them? Am I listening to them? Am I praying for them? Am I loving them? If I have a job, do I have clear expectations? Can I say no? Is it just a job? Does my family come before work? Do I do it with excellence when I'm there? If I'm a student, and this is something I talk with my girls about all the time. Am I being a good friend? Am I being a good listener? Am I doing my best? Am I being a light for Christ? If you're a son or a daughter, are you praying for your mom or dad? Are you being respectful of them? Are you helping them? Are you engaging life with them? Are you learning to number your days so that you may gain a heart of wisdom? I don't know where you find yourself in the mix of this life hack. As we walk out this life hack of time and determining what is important and not being directed by urgency, I want you to know that I believe in you, that you can do this, that this can be an opportunity to engage and take a step in such a powerful way that as we begin to actively pursue what's important, as we actively begin to place those things in our life that draw us closer to Him, my hope and my prayer is that you would be encouraged today about the reality of what God is calling you to be known and loved, because He knows everything about you and He loves you so, and He wants you to get this life hack of understanding the importance and living focused on those things that are important and not being directed by urgency. You guys are awesome. Let me pray with you. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for right now, for this time, for the challenge that's before us that comes out of John 4, and Jesus sharing with us and giving us the perspective of what is important and what to focus on. For the life of this Samaritan woman that resembles us, that living in urgency, living not to be known, living being hidden or not having the right perspective. God, just give us wisdom and clarity. Help us to know and understand you in a real and new way today. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for the reality of caring about who we are and who we're becoming. I pray that you would just allow us to know you and allow us to love you, and maybe one of these areas resonates with us more, whether as a Christian, a spouse, a parent, a worker, or a friend, that you would help us live that out in a real and a new way. God, you're awesome. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.